Hey, good morning, everybody. It's Ed, and this morning I'm going to work on a prop spellbook page. I'm going to work on a redo of the Magic Missile spell. I've done the Magic Missile spell before, but I kind of want to have more than one version of it, and I had an idea, so I thought I would kind of share my thought process on making these with you today. So I've got my blank page here and a pencil. That's all I really need to get going. So first thing I do is I block off the layout of how I want this page to turn out with sort of a loose collection of circles or other geometric shapes, and these are just to kind of guide me as to where I want to put the main points of attention for the page. And my thought process here is that, Magic Missile is a combat spell, it's a first level spell, and it needs to be quick. It doesn't have a lot of spell components. It's a verbal semantic spell according to the old AD&D descriptions. And it needs to be something that a wizard can fire off rapidly, so it can't be a very complicated. Now, some of these additional kind of messy lines I'll just erase later on, but I can't draw perfect circles really great, so I just do what I can do. And then I might connect these different areas of the spellbook page and kind of try to make them look like part of a whole. I don't use a ruler for any of this. I want it to be pretty organic. I just take my time. Okay, so up here I'm going to have sort of the main graphic for the hand positions for the spells, and I have an interesting way I think to do that today. And down in these locations I'll have information for making a magic item, like a wand that casts magic missiles, the best time to do that, and maybe some other information. Here in the margins I'll put all of the notes for the spell, and I'll show you how to do that. And then here in the middle I'll wind up drawing a picture of a scroll that will have the main magical word that's used to cast the spell. Now, for a long time I've kind of had a joke of, I always thought it was hilarious that in one of the old animes they used the names of heavy metal bands to cast their spells, which I just thought was hilarious. And so I've just stolen that for my own magical scrolls. A lot of the regular first and second level spells, and even the third level spells, especially like Fireball and stuff like that, they just use the name of a metal band as their main magical word. But there's only so many metal bands that I feel like using, and we'll see what we get away with there. Let's see if I can even fit this here. Yeah, I could probably fit that fit that band name there. So I may go with that band name, and more on that in a little bit. So one of the things that I like to do is the different hand gestures that a wizard would use, and really I just look at my own hands. So if I have a wizard who's doing this kind of a gesture to start, well, I'll just look at my own hand and I'll draw a picture of that. And so one of the things I thought would be interesting is that a wizard might have some cards, like a beginning wizard, because magic missile is a first level spell, so a beginning wizard might have some cards that have graphics on them that are like little tutorials to show them what their other hand should be doing, and they might hold that up in front of them as sort of a way to remind themselves of how to cast the spell. And they do away with that later, but I thought on the first spellbook page, or on the Magic Missile spellbook page, it might be funny to have that as something that's illustrated on there. So I'm going to go ahead and work on that part of the illustration for up in here, and then so I'm going to stop the video and then I'll come back after I've done that. Thanks. Okay, so I've sketched in my rough hand holding some cards that have the 3 different hand positions for casting the spells. Which would be with one hand, it could go through pretty quickly. I've been thinking about it, and I think down here I'm just going to make kind of a small little mode of energy, kind of the beginning of the actual magic missile. And the idea here is that maybe this little spark of energy appears when the caster kind of concentrates and starts the incant for the spell. And then this will end up being black. And then over here, I was thinking of having that be kind of the same thing, but just more pronounced as the spell is ready to unleash. Just kind of a spiky, magical spell looking kind of a thing. Really, this is just imagination, more play pretend. Okay, kind of like that. And then in the old comic books, they used to have these kind of black dots of energy. Maybe I'll surround that circle graphic with some dots of energy just to make it really look like that's ready to roll. And maybe there's even some, in this black, maybe there's even some white dots, the same kind of thing, is smaller. Alright, so in here we're going to do our main magic word. And this is what the wizard yells when they cast their spell. And so I have these made up magical alphabets, and since this is a regular first level spell, this is a Pentagarchy approved spell, so they're just going to use Common Arcane. And so the first letter of this is an M, which is kind of a funky one. It's kind of a huge letter, so let's see if we can fit it in here. It's kind of got a 2 S's kind of dealy going on, and I'll just pencil these in to start with, and then as I actually work on this, I'll kind of clean it up. And then E. E is a cool letter. It's got that almost Egyptian kind of thing going on. And then G. G's got a little bit of a Nordic ruin kind of thing going on here. With some dots and some kind of strange side marks here. And A has got kind of a swirly gig. It's kind of like a number 9. And then this thing kind of comes down like this. And then it kind of goes up here. I just made this stuff up. And then D kind of comes across like that. And then there's a little branch down, then has like a big fat area here. And it's got kind of a tail. And then some down blobs here. And E again. E's one of those letters that just kind of looks cool, so I don't mind that it repeats. And T is like an N, swirly N gig thing. And then H. It's kind of a weird VW kind of a thing. So I'm going to have to extend this down just a hair more. Which is why we lay all this out with pencil to start with. Just to make sure everything fits okay. And it's kind of got a reversed J here on the end, kind of dealy. It's kind of got a deal like that. Megadeth. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and clean all this up and sort of ink it, and then we'll be back. Hi guys, we're back. And so we've sort of inked this up. We've got our wizard holding the 3 cards that show the 3 hand positions that you go through quickly to cast a spell. You've got the basic incantations set up over here, which is in a pretend language that I call Rakian, which comes from the Empire of Rakia in the south. It's like a Egyptian kind of an empire. And so I have a version of their script, which is see if I can easily find it in here. It's one of the downsides of using your own notebooks. Okay, so I have like an ancient Rakian down here, which is based on just Egyptian hieroglyphs that I copied out of different sources. And then I transform those into the Rakian that I usually use for scrolls. And usually, you know, this process takes me a couple of tries. I'll play around with making up a magical alphabet, and then I won't like it, and so I'll kind of modify it. So this is what I've come up with for the Rakian that I usually use. So this these magical words that you're supposed to say before the big word of power to cast your magic missile is call, and you'll see that the L is only put once, and then there are these two little triangles afterwards, and that's like a shorthand notation I use in all of my symbols, so that if a letter repeats itself, I only put it down once, but then I put these two little triangles in here just to make it seem a little more hieroglyphy, I guess. Call the glowing orb, and then you say the word of power for the spell, which in this case is Megadeth, and then you cast your magic missile, which I think is kind of fun. So over in this area, we're going to throw down some notes about when is the best time to make a wand of magic missiles. You know, it's a basic actual enchanted item using this spell. And so I've got marked here my my calendar. This is a Northern Hemisphere calendar, and it has the January, February, March, April, May, June, and through the course of the year, divided up by the names of the different gods commonly worshipped in the northern part of my fantasy world. This is all just, you know, made up pretend material. I made up a bunch of different star constellations that go with each one, and then there's usually an elemental symbol that goes with them. And just this combination helps my thought process as I look at each spell to say, well, you know, is this more of a angry wind goddess magical spell, or more of a stubborn smith god with an ox as his, you know, constellation kind of a spell? Or is it a warrior maiden that's associated with iron, you know, and weapons kind of a spell? So in this case, after looking through all of this, I think that the one I'm going to go with, simply because it's the wizard's staff, is Shirako. And Shirako is one of the goddesses of the four winds. And there are, Tempest is the north wind, you know, the tempestuous north. You have, I think it's Callisto. No, it's Silky. No, Shirako is the south wind. So Tempest the north, Shirako is the south. And then I think it's Callisto is the east wind, and Silky is the west wind, or something like that. I'd have to go in my other book and look it up, because so much information, you know, you even as the dungeon master, you can't carry all the minutia in your head all the time. That'd be ridiculous. So anyway, it's going to be Shirako. So what I'm going to do is go back to my magical spellbook page prop, and I'm going to see how did I draw this staff. So I start out with a couple of small stars, and I go up here to a very bright star, and then a medium star, and then another medium star kind of up here where it starts to bend, and then it kind of goes up here to a small one, and then to a large one, and then to a small one, and then to one last large one. So I just do this in pencil so I can make changes if I need to. Let's go through here and connect my dots. And that's how mysterious that whole process is. I'll put some little rays around my brightest stars so when I go back and I ink it I don't forget that. And I'll put some around my medium-sized stars. Got 2 in a row here. And around this bright star. So that's my staff, and that's saying that I need to make this in the month of Scirocco. And let's see, this is a combat spell, so it's not like a charm person or something that's gonna last on a target for a long time. Because sometimes if it's a spell with a duration like charm person or sleep or that sort of thing, I'll come up with some made up herbal concoction you can toss in somebody's face once you've mixed it up, and it's going to snap them out of the spell immediately as like a little counter. But Magic Missile isn't really going to have that. So let's see. Let's go back. I always like to include something additional on this kind of thing, this kind of scroll. Okay, so here's my Rakian. So what do I want to say down in this area here? I might say elm. Elm's kind of a cool sounding tree. Let's go with elm. We're going to say that elm makes the best wands. So we got an E, an L, an M, I just have to keep flipping back and forth and seeing what the code is, because this is just basically an alphabetical code. I just made a whole bunch of made up symbols for. It's anything that you could do yourself, and I just write down the message in English. Do like a short version though. Elm for dun, dun, dun. F-O-R Elm for A. And I might just throw that in the middle there. Kind of goes down. I don't really spend age thinking about this stuff. I just want to make a fun little prop. W A, and if we run out of room, we'll just drop down to the next little space below and WA and kind of sticks out there and goes around like that, and D. I like that rune. That's pretty cool looking rune. Some of these ideas I had for runes I like better than others, to be sure. But you know, you only have so much time in the day, so how much time do you really want to spend on redoing it every single time? Psalm Elm for a Wand is the message here on this time of the month. And sure, it's a little messy, but you know, basically, I kind of see a spellbook page as the notes that a wizard writes in his spellbook, so that if he is absent-minded or forgets some part of this information, he can just look back on it and remember it, and to help him, you know, if he has to rememorize some part of a spell or a hand gesture, he's got that. I got that in his book. So I may add up some additional stuff up here and then ink this up and then call it good. And that's the process that I use for making prop spellbook pages. It's really, really simple, just kind of off the cuff, nothing super fancy, it's just for fun. And I hope you found that informative, and maybe you'll make some fun props of your own for your players. Hope you guys have a great weekend, and stay safe out there. Thanks.